Welcome to Tales for Bookeemonsters. Tonight we're going to be reading chapter 21 in our Advent calendar cozy mystery bedtime read-aloud book, Christmas at Glitter Peak Lodge by Kjersti Herland Johnsen. It is a work in translation. It is from Norway, but it is set up as an Advent calendar, and being December 21st, we're reading chapter 21. So what I will do is I will take myself off stage here, so all you'll see is that ambiance. It's a repeat from last night. I just thought it was kind of gothic-y and pretty, and you don't really see that too often, so I'm going to use that one again. When we are done with this chapter, I will say good night, and we will sign off and do it again tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here. December 21. Evening red and morning gray, a good sign for a fair day, Alfred said, taking a sip of coffee. Huh? Ingrid asked as she came through the kitchen door. She was tired and had a pounding headache. That's what they say, the caretaker said. A gray morning means it'll be nice later in the day, right, Maja? That's right, the chef said, glancing out the kitchen window. It's going to be sunny later today, and it started getting warmer. That's the calender for you. The what now? Sonny asked. The calender, Maja replied. When it gets warmer in December, and you can get more baking done. As long as it doesn't get too warm, Sonny said as she was loading the dishwasher. We can't have slush when we're picking up the Christmas tree with a horse and sleigh. It has to be really Insta-friendly. Really what? Alfred asked. Nothing. Nice pictures, Sonny replied. She'd given up on involving the caretaker in conversations about the hotel's social media strategy, not to mention future-oriented topics in general, but she did trust him to pick out a nice Christmas tree. Can't do much about the warm weather, Maja said. It comes every year during the Christmas baking. And it's St. Thomas's Day today, Alfred grumbled. It'll be good to take a sip of that Christmas beer. As if you haven't tasted it already, Maja said with a scoff. Alfred muttered something in response that they couldn't make out. Hi, you guys aren't grumpy, are you? Hussein said. He was just coming into the kitchen. If someone is grumpy, all they have to do is eat some gingerbread dough and they'll feel much better. He opened the refrigerator door with his bandaged hand and reached the other toward a bowl covered in plastic wrap. No, Hussein, Maja said sternly. You can't eat any more dough. We're baking it later today, and then you can decorate the gingerbread house with the other kids once we've put it together. Hussein, you know what David says? Sonny asked when she saw that Hussein was about to protest. Eggs should not fight stones. It's a saying from China, where he's from. Am I the egg then? Hussein countered. Sonny winked at him. Two families from Oslo arrived before lunch. Ingrid had just checked them in and given them the key cards to the family apartments when Pia, David, and Vigard came down to eat. David had been working in the library all morning, while Pia and Vigard hadn't made an appearance until now. Ingrid decided to eat with them. Fresh trout and cucumber salad and a big glass of ice water kicked her headache to the curb, and the sun had come out just as Alfred predicted. It shone over trees and mountain peaks in a clear blue sky. It was a couple of degrees below freezing, even though the temperature was rising fast, so the snow was dry. That meant great sledding conditions. To add to the atmosphere, the hotel had borrowed horses and a sleigh to transport the Christmas tree so that the most adventurous guests could ride the sleigh back. Sonny, and the new kitchen assistant would serve mulled wine and gingerbread along the way. Pia, David, and Vigard were joining the expedition along with several of the newly arrived guests. There weren't any spruce trees up here in the mountains, so they would drive down to Dahlen to chop down the beautiful specimen Alfred had found in the fall, which would have the honor of being this year's Christmas tree at Glitter Peak. Tomorrow, the guests would help decorate the tree, another Insta-friendly opportunity, Sonny had noted, and it would be the centerpiece of the dining room this Christmas. Just as the minibuses were about to leave, the front door opened and a voice called out, "Wait for us!" Out came Freya Wilkins, clad in a wool cape, laced-up boots, and a bearskin hat, speeding across the parking lot. John Wilkins followed her, immaculately dressed in his navy blue winter coat. Of course, Ingrid thought. A daughter of Norway couldn't possibly miss out on the felling of the Christmas tree. Perhaps the picture of my mother had just been a moment of confusion? Since Freya had clearly improved and now looked more like the robust creature who'd arrived at the hotel, Ingrid might be able to ask about that. But she could do so later. Ingrid heard the sound of sleigh bells and opened the front door just as the sleigh pulled up outside the hotel, the minibus following close behind. The Christmas tree was just as beautiful as Alfred had promised. With the help of the farmer who owned the forest, he'd cut it down with great pomp and circumstance, carefully documented by Sonny, while the hotel guests were served mulled wine and gingerbread and took pictures. Now it would be stored in the basement to acclimatize before being decorated tomorrow. Voices and laughter could be heard inside the dining room, and Ingrid went in to see what was happening. She stood inside the door and watched Hussein, who'd managed to charm the 3 teens visiting from Oslo into decorating the gingerbread house with him. And it wasn't just any gingerbread house. It was more like a castle with a tower and spire that were now being decorated with icing and M&Ms, gummy Santas, and sprinkles. And what was that behind the castle? A kind of point? A spire? A mountain? Ingrid remembered what Aisha had said about the gingerbread houses at the family's hotel in Aqaba. Perhaps Hussein had been involved in the decorating there too? But he'd been pretty young at the time. She wasn't sure how much he'd actually remembered from his home country or countries. Hussein had been born in Syria and taken to Jordan, then to Nepal, and now to Norway. Where was home to him, really? And how clear was the image he had of his father? Apart from Skype calls, Hussein hadn't seen his father in more than 2 years. She heard footsteps behind her, and suddenly Aisha was standing next to her. Aisha watched her son, who was chatting away with the older children. "It's nice to see him like this, Ingrid," she said. "I was so scared for him. But right now, at least, he seems to be doing well." Ingrid nodded. "He does," she said. Hussein drizzled a thick glob of icing over the top of the gingerbread mountain. It flowed slowly down the mountainside. Then he picked up a small gingerbread man and placed it at the very top. The sun was already setting behind the ridge when Thor Cedar pulled into the parking lot outside the hotel. The sun had been shining all day, and the air had grown noticeably warmer and more humid. Maja had insisted that her nephew join the Christmas beer tasting at the bar this afternoon and scoffed when Thor started going on about the sheep. "I think your father should be able to take care of that," she said firmly, then called her big brother to encourage him to be a farmer again for a day or two. "That Thorbjorn has gotten too used to Thor doing everything on the farm," she said to Alfred and Ingrid. "It's good for him to get out of that old armchair of his once in a while." And Ingrid was happy that Thor came. Vigard had eagerly nudged her in the side and raised his eyebrows when he heard that Thor was going to spend the evening at the hotel and even stay the night. "Wonderful," he said. "It's about time." "He's not spending the night with me, Vigard," Ingrid explained, rolling her eyes. "He'll have his own room." But Vigard wasn't deterred. "We'll see about that," he said with a coy smirk and more nudging and eyebrow raising. God, he could be so childish. But it could also be the case that... No, she shook that thought. Anyway, it was a bit awkward to greet Thor when they met in the foyer. "It's nice to see you again," she wanted to say. "Sorry about basically throwing you out the door when Preben came and about acting so strangely. It's just been a bit much for me. I think about you all the time. I want to kiss you again." But instead, she said, "How were the roads? Has it started getting slippery?" "Yeah, in some places, because it's gotten so much warmer," Thor replied, setting a small backpack on the floor. "But it wasn't too much of an issue, and it'll freeze again soon. How's Hussein, and how are you?" The traditional Christmas beer tasting was sacred at Glitter Peak. Beer glasses in various sizes had been set up at the hotel bar. When Ingrid and Thor peeked in, several of the guests were already in place, many of them red in the face from the Christmas tree event and other activities. Two new arrivals from Oslo walked in from the library, eagerly discussing cross-country skiing trails. They sat down at one of the tables by the bar. Ingrid took Thor to a table where she thought they could sit with Nana Borghild and Maja. She'd reserved a table nearby for Vigard, David, and Pia, but it was currently empty. I hope Pia comes down too, and that they don't just stay up in David and Vigard's room, she said to Thor. Then there's not much point in treating people to a hotel stay. Thor turned to her. Oh, really? So people have to make themselves useful here if they want to visit? There was a twinkle in his blue eyes, and he couldn't quite manage to hide a smile. Ingrid smiled back. Yes, but all you have to do is approve the Christmas beer and talk to your aunt a little, and your mission is accomplished. And with you too, I hope. Talk, I mean. Because I guess we have some stuff to talk about, don't we? I do want to talk, she said. It felt as though her stomach was doing somersaults, but not necessarily with everyone else around. Let's find some time afterward. Or some other time entirely, she thought. Did they have to talk about things? Couldn't they just keep pretending nothing had happened? The bar had started to fill up, and in came Nana Borghild with Maja. Ingrid placed the older ladies in the best seats next to the wall. She and Thor could sit on the wooden chairs on the other side of the table. The bartender, Tom, was busy setting things up, but the evening's master of ceremonies would be the otherwise reserved Alfred. Maja was in charge of the brewing at the hotel, but Alfred was the best drinker, so they'd agreed he was the right man for the job. Tom would assist along with Sunny, who would also simultaneously interpret into English. 6 different types of beer were to be tasted before the beer could be officially approved. Platters of cured ham, reindeer sausage, and home-baked flatbread were on the tables, as well as jugs of water and lots of small glasses. The Wilkinsons came in and found a seat farther away. Ingrid felt restless and did a round through the bar where the kitchen assistants were now carrying in large jugs of different types of beer. She spotted Vigard and David with Pia in tow. Ingrid waved and breathed a sigh of relief. She worked her way through the increasingly crowded bar to show them where to sit. We've taken so many nice photos today, Pia said excitedly. Her cheeks were rosy after the Christmas tree excursion and possibly from some expertly placed blush. And I'm really excited about the tasting event here. It'll be great, Vigard assured her. Just wait and see. Maybe there will even be a surprise or two as well. Oh no, no more surprises, Ingrid thought, but she didn't say it out loud. Let's hope you approve of the beer, she said. Otherwise, it won't really be Christmas, you know. Pia P. sat on a chair and grinned at Ingrid. I'm not really supposed to have beer, of course, but I had to catch this. I think Alfred might just have something for you too, Ingrid said with a smile. As if on cue, Alfred stood up by the bar and struck a small gong. He was wearing a plaid shirt and vest, and with his gray sideburns, he looked like a combination of an elf and Neil Young. Sunny and Tom were making their way around the bar with jugs of the first type of beer. Ingrid hurried back to the table where Maja, Borghild, and Thor were chatting. Welcome to beer tasting at Glitter Peak Lodge. Alfred's booming voice resounded through the room, and the conversation died down. Traditionally, St. Thomas's Day was the day when all the brewing and baking had to be finished. With this beer tasting, we honor this tradition. He raised a glass of golden brew. We're starting with a light lager that Sunny and Tom are bringing around to you now. We've also made a non-alcoholic version, which is the one in the blue jugs. Can one person at each table be in charge of pouring? Both types of beer should be straw yellow with a thick foam. The taste should be fresh with lots of carbonation. Sunny translated and explained for the foreign guests, and clinking and appreciative murmurs spread through the room as the glasses were filled. Let's have a taste. Cheers! And now you have to help us. Do you approve of the beer, yes or no? A unanimous yes echoed through the room. The cheerful atmosphere got more and more lively as the guests tasted their way through dark lager with a strong taste of hops, English brown ale reminiscent of toffee, and Glitter Peak's smoked beer with the taste and smell of German smoked malt. Ingrid held back. She was at work after all and mostly drank water. but took a few sips of the beer and the non-alcoholic Pilsner, which was new this year. To finish, Alfred offered a classic Norwegian Christmas beer. The frothy, red-brown drink tasted sweet and rich and smelled of fruit and caramel. She took a proper sip of this one, and for the first time in these pre-Christmas weeks, Ingrid felt a tiny glimmer of Christmas spirit. Now this was how Christmas should taste. When all the beers had been approved, Alfred started to sing Norge. It's a Norwegian, guys. I can't do that one. At first, he was the only one singing Norway's traditional toast, while the audience scraped their chairs a little awkwardly and looked down at the lyric sheets, which they only now spotted on the tables in front of them. But then a clear young voice sounded through the room and joined in. Ingrid turned and was surprised to see it was Sunny. She walked up to the bar as she sang, managing to get several members of the audience to join in as well. Some of the older Norwegians had heard the song before and knew the tune. Freya Wilkins was among them, and she looked moved as she lifted her small glass of beer and sang. When the applause had died down, Ingrid saw that Sunny had brought a guitar out from behind the bar and was now putting a strap over her shoulder. An expectant murmur spread through the room. Ingrid glanced over at Vigard, who smiled slyly and gave her a thumbs up. So this was what he'd meant by a surprise. Sunny looked out over the room. She seemed different from how she normally was, more grown up somehow. She brushed back her blonde curls, cleared her throat, and strummed a few notes on the guitar. She didn't need a microphone or amplifier here. The silence was palpable, and her clear voice carried through the room as she sang the first lines of the beautiful, mournful, A Kind of Christmas Card. She then transitioned into a traditional Christmas song that encouraged a sing-along for the chorus. The applause lasted for a long time when Sunny was finished, and the pleasant atmosphere was amplified by both the singing and the drinking. Vigard grinned at Ingrid and waved at her from across the room. He looked as though he was taking credit for the success. Had he become Sunny's manager now, too? Ingrid picked up the jug of Christmas beer, refilled the glasses, and raised her own to toast Nana Borghild, then Maja, and then Thor. His blue gaze was intense, and it was hard to tear her eyes away. She felt her face getting warm, probably red too. Damn it. Her grandmother looked at her with a small smile. What was Nana Borghild thinking? Ingrid met Thor's gaze again. It felt so good to just be in the moment. Suddenly, finding out about all those old secrets didn't seem so daunting anymore. There were plenty of challenges, that was for sure, but such was life. Right now, it felt as though everything would be fine as long as they were here together, at least for a little while. Some tense muscles in her shoulders gently started to loosen. What an atmosphere with so many good people. Maybe, just maybe, this would go well after all. Some of the guests had started making their way out of the bar, and Ingrid followed Borghild and Maja to the foyer, while Thor joined Vigard and the others. When she came back a few minutes later, the three men were engaged in lively conversation. Ingrid sat down at the empty chair at the men's table. Hi, guys. This went so well, but where did Pia get off to? She went up to her room, Vigard said. She's tired, but everything's fine. That's good. Do you want to keep going with the Christmas beer? They were more than happy to do that. Ingrid made sure they had a new jug at the table, and she herself had a glass of ice water. The atmosphere was nice and relaxed, and the conversation flowed easily. Thor, you have to show Ingrid the pictures, David said. He turned to Ingrid. We've had time to talk about both sheep and photography while you were busy. Yes, it turns out they have that interest in common, Vigard said. Photography, I mean, not sheep. Thor leaned toward his backpack on the floor and pulled out a folder. I brought something I wanted to show you. He pushed a couple of glasses aside and placed the folder in front of her. She opened it and flipped through the pictures he'd selected. Wow, these are really good, she exclaimed, and she meant it. Sheep, mountains, old buildings, cars, motifs from the village were familiar, but Thor had a keen eye for capturing the beauty in everyday situations. Ingrid, you should consider offering photography courses Or workshops for the guests here during the summer, David suggested. Ingrid nodded. Yeah, that's a good idea. It's a great idea, Vigard emphasized. Ingrid smiled and sank back in her chair. It was rare to spend time with these three friends all together. She just hoped that Vigard wouldn't make any embarrassing hints about her and Thor, or, even worse, about Preben. How things would be between them in the future was something they had to figure out on their own. Ingrid? Maja's hand on her shoulder pulled Ingrid out of her thoughts. She would have loved to sit here with the guys all evening, but now the chef needed to discuss something with her. Ingrid could smell the delicious aromas even before the kitchen door was open. The staff had dinner preparations well underway. Tonight, they would be serving a big traditional Christmas buffet, ribs with both red cabbage and sauerkraut, Christmas sausage, and medisterkaker, pinnekjot and mashed turnips, lutefisk with bacon and almond potatoes, rice pudding and red sauce, kransekake. They were willing to do Christmas Eve a bit early so that the visitors could taste as much of the traditional food as possible. To satisfy guests who had what Maja called, with a snort, newfangled food preferences, they also had nut roast and a number of different vegetables and salads. Ingrid stopped Sunny on her way to the dishwasher, her hands full of plates. Sunny, thank you for a fantastic performance. What a nice surprise. Sunny beamed. Thanks. She set down a tray of glasses and pulled her phone out of her pocket. Look, Pia P shared this on Instagram. Have you ever seen so many likes and comments? That's amazing, Ingrid said. I can't believe it, really, Sunny said. So many people have seen me. And the hotel, too, she added quickly. I know it's Pia and not me they're following, but still. Yeah, that's how it works, Ingrid said. We have to be on the same team as the right people, and I'm happy I have you to help me with that. When the staff gathered around the long table in the kitchen after dinner was over, the consensus was that this very important evening had surpassed all expectations. All of the guests seemed really happy tonight, too, Nana Borghild said. I guess the party will continue for some, but I'm going to head off to bed myself. She smiled. Good night, dear Ingrid, she said. Now you should go and find your friends, especially one of them. Party in the suite, said the text from Vigard. We're waiting for you. Okay, she could treat herself to a glass or two with the others. She could rest another time. Well, if the hotel were bankrupt, she could rest all the time. Be right there, she replied. She took a quick glance at herself in the mirror, changed her shirt, put on some lip gloss, and headed for the Peer Gynt suite. She hadn't gone far when she stopped abruptly, ran down 2 floors to the wine cabinet by the bar, pulled out a bottle of champagne, and took a tray with 5 glasses with her. She grabbed a bottle of Borghild's raspberry soda for Pia as well before continuing as steadily as she could up the stairs, stopping outside the door to the suite. She heard music coming from inside before she knocked, and it grew louder when Vigard opened the door with a big smile. She didn't recognize the song, but then again, she wasn't particularly up to date when it came to the latest music. Hi, Ingrid, Vigard called out, hugging her as if it hadn't been less than an hour since they'd last seen each other. Hi, Vigard, why don't you help me with this tray before I drop it, you goof? She laughed, struggling to keep her balance. Ooh, champagne, Vigard shouted in response. He took the tray and placed it on the low coffee table by the sofa. Thor had stood up halfway when he spotted the potential crisis with the champagne, but then he sat back down next to David, who greeted Ingrid with a warm smile. Pia was sitting in an armchair, dressed in another gorgeous wool dress, with her long legs in a pair of high-heeled shoes. How was it possible to look so elegant when she was so pregnant? She was probably tired, too. She's really making an effort, Ingrid thought. Ingrid sat down in the last available chair at the coffee table. She filled a glass with raspberry soda and handed it to Pia. Then she opened the champagne. Lovely, Vigard sighed happily, grabbing the first glass as soon as Ingrid had filled it. He tilted his head back, and his glass was already empty before Ingrid had even had time to fill glasses for Thor, David, and herself. He held the glass up for a refill and called out, Cheers to Glitter Peak! Cheers, the others echoed. Ingrid inhaled the aroma from her own glass. It was reminiscent of coffee and toast. The taste was fresh and fruity. Yes, Vigard was right. This was lovely. And Glitter Peak was worth toasting. Maybe she should run down and get another bottle right away. It was almost 1 in the morning when Pia got up from the chair and had to support herself on the backrest. Whoa, I think I stood up a little too quickly, she said. I almost blacked out. Be careful, Ingrid said. We don't want any more people fainting around here. Come on, I'll take you back to your room. She put an arm around Pia, who leaned her head against her shoulder. I'll come with you, Thor said. It's getting pretty late anyway. Ingrid looked at the empty bottles and collection of glasses and snack bowls on the coffee table. Maybe I should just clean this up first. Nope, you're not working right now, David protested. He was sitting on the sofa with Vigard's head resting on his lap. We'll clean up in the morning. Nighty-night, Vigard said with a wink, waving goodbye. It's later than I thought. I really should have been in bed a long time ago, Ingrid said once Pia had been safely escorted to her room, and she and Thor were walking through the corridors. But we were having such a nice time. Yeah, it really was nice, Thor said. Everyone feels extra at home here when they learn more about the inner life at the hotel. We almost laughed ourselves to death when you told us about Aunt Maja and Speedy, and the dry rot that was really Cheetos. Ingrid laughed. There was a lot to laugh about when it came to the dramatic episodes that had happened here recently, and the strong personalities that surrounded them at the hotel. But she hadn't talked about everything. They arrived at her apartment, and she unlocked the door and stood in the doorway for a moment. Good night, Ingrid, Thor said. She summoned her courage. You don't want to come in for a sec, do you? So you're not so tired after all? She laughed again. No, I'm pretty tired. Dead tired, really. But like you said, we have some things we need to talk about. Once they were inside, she filled a couple of glasses with water and put them on the table before plopping down on the sofa. Thor sat down next to her. Now they finally had the chance to talk. But instead of saying something wise and mature, to her own surprise and Thor's, she started crying. Thor grabbed her hand. Ingrid, what's the matter? Don't be upset. Did I say something? Do something? Thor really was so sweet, with his blue eyes and caring smile. No, it's nothing you've said or done, she said, sniffling. I'm just so tired and confused because of this thing with you and Preben. And there's so much going on here, and the electrical systems are bad, and Nana Borghild won't really explain what the musk ox wants, and certainly not why she has a picture of Freya Wilkins' mother on her wall. Thor fell silent for a long time. Wow, he said, I'm a little lost, but I guess there's even more to talk about than I thought. Have some water, Ingrid. It was such a relief to tell him everything. They kicked off their shoes and sat cross-legged on the sofa with their backs against the armrests. Thor got more water and listened. Some things he already knew, other things were new to him. She felt her head clear the more she spoke. There's no way around having a proper talk with both Borghild and Freya Wilkins, Thor said. I can come with you if you want. Maybe we can make more sense of things if we work together. He moved closer to her, lifted her outstretched legs so they rested across his lap, and took her hand. Ingrid, he said, I wonder... Okay, I'm just going to ask you straight out. Is there still something going on between you and Preben Wexelson? She shook her head. No, she replied. Not that it's any of my business, he said, or I guess in a way it is. In any case, it's important for me to know where things stand. He blushed. Because I have feelings for you, Ingrid. I guess I really like you, plain and simple. He squeezed her hand. I've felt this way ever since you came back to Glitter Peak. I hoped there could be something between us. And after what happened here in your apartment, but then I found you and Preben hand in hand in the library, and I felt so stupid. I mean, how could I have thought someone like you would like someone like me, when you could have someone like him? There's nothing between me and Preben anymore, she assured Thor. He looked at her. Are you sure about that? She paused. After what happened in the Himalayas, she'd been positive that her relationship with Preben was over forever. But now that he was back in her life, was she still as certain? She thought about their last encounter, his suggestions about the foundation and the new collaboration, the fresh start it might mean, his intense gaze, his enthusiasm, the agreement to talk again soon. But yes, she thought, she was, in fact, quite certain. It's over, she said. Done. A relationship with a man like Preben is like binary code. The answer can only be 1 or 0. It's all or nothing, and now it's nothing. Zero. Zero. On the romantic front, that is. But I do think we could be friends. Collaborators. That's why he was here, actually. She quickly summarized the project Preben had proposed. Thor was still holding her hand as he took in what she was saying. It's good if you can work together, he said. If you can make something meaningful out of what happened. But I have to admit, I'm happy to hear you say it's over, because I think about you all the time, Ingrid, and especially since we kissed. I've been thinking about you a lot too, Ingrid said. It was really nice, but I wasn't sure what it meant. I wondered if it was just a whim. I wondered if I'd ruined our friendship, because I guess I never really believed what Vigard said about you having a crush on me. Thor looked horrified. Did he say that? Is it really that obvious? She laughed. Yeah, I guess so. At least Vigard has been insisting on it for a long time, but he's always teasing me, you know. And what about you? Did you know? No, I don't think you've done much to show it, she said with a smile. Before now, I mean. It's always been so easy to talk to you, so nice to be with you. I would have liked to spend more time with you, but I've never felt like you wanted there to be something more between us. She thought for a moment. Then she went on. I guess I've been pretty preoccupied with everything around here lately. I've been letting everything revolve around my own problems, work and loss and heartbreak. But I could have asked you about the same things. How you are really doing. Whether you find it lonely on the farm. Whether you miss having someone to share life with. But it always felt like it was too big to bring up, too personal. It's been easier to talk about practical things. Thor squeezed her hand. Again, she thought about how big and strong his hands were. I want to talk to you about everything, Ingrid. I realize that now, but I guess Vigard was right. I haven't been seeing things clearly because I put you in the friend zone. The friend zone? He smiled wryly before growing serious again. So is that what I am to you? Just a friend? No, Thor. She looked him straight in the eye. You're more than just a friend. Much more. And then he kissed her, holding one hand against the back of her head and pressing the other against the small of her back. He was so warm. His lips were warm. His breath was warm. She didn't want him to stop. A dam burst, and she kissed him back, sliding her hands under his shirt, feeling his warm skin. She wanted him. For the first time in what seemed like an infinitely long time, she wanted a man. Ingrid, he murmured, as she continued to kiss him, stroking her hands over his back, down to the waistband of his pants. He was glowing. She was in his glow. She was somewhere else. They lay on the couch afterward. Their clothes were strewn across the floor, and she stroked his hair absently as the aftermath of what she'd just experienced rippled through her. It had been a long time since she felt so good. It took a while before she started getting cold. Come on, Thor said. He lifted her up from the couch and carried her into the bedroom. Her mind was racing, but she felt so relaxed with his arms around her. It was a feeling of finally being home. Snow was falling gently outside the window. Early tomorrow morning, Thor would go back down to the village and resume his life as a sheep farmer, but tonight he would be here. She fell asleep with his warm body close to hers, a single duvet spread over them both. End of chapter 21. Tomorrow we'll do chapter 22. Thank you for listening. Have a good night. God bless.